Driverly.com, unlimited drama series.
My son Mason dropped his school folder on the kitchen table with the kind of theatrical disgust only a 10-year-old could muster. The paper scattered across the scratched oak surface like fallen leaves, but his words hit me harder than any hurricane. I don't want your last name anymore, Dad. My new dad says you're a loser, and I should take a real man's name. My wife Deborah beamed from the doorway, her yoga-toned arms crossed, that satisfied smirk playing across her lips like she'd just won the lottery. The morning light streaming through our kitchen window caught the highlights in her blonde hair. Highlights that cost more than my monthly grocery budget since the auto plant laid me off 6 months ago. I said nothing, not a damn word. Instead, I calmly reached into my shirt pocket, pulled out a pen, and slid a document across the table toward Mason. Fine, son. Sign here. The paper was crisp, official looking. I'd been carrying it around for 3 days, ever since I'd confirmed what I'd suspected for weeks. The late-night texts, the business meetings that ran until midnight. The way Cassie, Deb's best friend and yoga instructor, couldn't look me in the eye anymore when she came over to gossip. Mason stared at the paper, confusion replacing his bratty confidence. What is it? Name change documentation, I said, my voice steady as a rock. If you want to be a Moffat instead of a Holloway, you'll need to make it legal. Deb stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the tile floor. She was wearing those expensive yoga pants again, the ones that cost more than my work boots. Brent, what are you— Just helping my son become the man he wants to be, I interrupted, still watching Mason. Isn't that what good fathers do, Deb? Support their children's choices? The sarcasm in my voice was thick enough to cut with a butter knife, but Mason was too young to catch it. Deb, however, went pale beneath her spray tan. Mason picked up the pen with shaking fingers. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the hidden camera I'd installed in my home office 2 weeks ago. The camera that had captured everything. Every whispered phone call. Every passionate embrace. Every cruel laugh about finally getting rid of that loser Brent. The pen scratched across the paper. Mason Holloway became Mason Moffat, with a few strokes of blue ink. There, I said, folding the document and slipping it back into my pocket. All done. Your new dad will be so proud. That's when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Gold and Associates, our family lawyer's office. Perfect timing. Mr. Holloway? The voice on the other end was Mr. Gold himself, not his secretary. That was unusual. I need to speak with you immediately. There's been a development regarding the property transfer documents you filed last week. I glanced at Deb, who was now hovering behind Mason like a protective hawk. What kind of development? The EPA has just classified your property as a contaminated site. The cleanup liability is substantial. We need to discuss this in person, immediately. How substantial? I asked, though I already knew the answer. $4.7 million, Mr. Holloway. And according to the transfer documents you filed, your wife is now the sole responsible party. I hung up the phone and looked at Deb's confused face. Honey, that was our lawyer. He needs to speak with you about some paperwork. Something about the house. The color drained from her face completely now. What paperwork? What about the house? I stood up, kissed Mason on the forehead, and grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair. Ask Chad. I'm sure he'll explain everything. The Blue Loon hadn't changed in 20 years. Same cracked vinyl booths, same neon beer signs buzzing in the windows, same smell of fried food and broken dreams. It was the kind of place where laid-off factory workers came to nurse their wounds and share their war stories. Tommy Briggs was already 3 beers deep when I walked in, his massive frame hunched over the bar like a mountain of flannel and disappointment. Tommy had worked the line next to me for 15 years, before the plant closed. Now, he fixed cars in his garage and pretended it was enough to support his family. Brent, he called out, raising his bottle in a mock salute. Come celebrate my wife's promotion. She's now the assistant manager at Dollar General. We're moving up in the world. I slid onto the bar stool next to him and ordered a whiskey. Congratulations. At this rate, you'll be able to afford the good ramen noodles. Tommy laughed, but it was bitter. You hear about the Hendersons? Lost their house last week. Bank took it. 30 years of payments, gone. Tough break, I said, taking a sip of my drink. The whiskey burned, but it was a good burn. Clean. Honest. Speaking of tough breaks, Tommy continued, word around town is that your missus is stepping out on you. Sorry, man. I know that's gotta hurt. I stared at my reflection in the mirror behind the bar. 42 years old, graying at the temples, wearing a flannel shirt that had seen better decades. I looked exactly like what I was, a washed-up factory worker whose wife had traded up. Yeah, I heard that rumor too, I said. You gonna do something about it? I finished my whiskey in one gulp and set the glass down with a soft click. Already did. Before Tommy could ask what I meant, the door burst open and Cassie stumbled in, her yoga mat bag slung over her shoulder, her face flushed with excitement and gossip. Oh my God, Brent, she gasped, rushing over to us. You need to get home right now. Deb is having some kind of breakdown. She's screaming at Chad, throwing things, crying. The neighbors are all watching. Mrs. Blevins called the police. I ordered another whiskey. Sounds like a personal problem. Cassie stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Personal problem? Brent, your wife is having a mental breakdown in your front yard. Correction, I said, savoring the words, like fine wine. My ex-wife is having a mental breakdown in her front yard. I don't live there anymore. The bar went quiet. Even the jukebox seemed to pause between songs. What do you mean, ex-wife? Tommy asked. I pulled out my phone and showed them the video I'd recorded that morning. Deb and Chad, wrapped around each other in my home office, discussing their plans for my future. The audio was crystal clear. Once we get rid of Brent, we can sell this dump and move to my condo downtown, Chad was saying. He's too stupid to fight the divorce. We'll take him for everything. What about Mason? Deb asked, her voice breathy with excitement. Boarding school? I'm not raising another man's kid. The video ended with them laughing. Actually laughing. Cassie's face went white. Brent, I didn't know it was that bad. I thought it was just, a rough patch. Rough patch? I stood up and threw a 20 on the bar. Cassie, you've been covering for her for months. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise. I was halfway to the door when Tommy called out, Brent, what did you do? What's got Deb so worked up? I turned back, and for the first time in months, I smiled. A real smile. I gave her exactly what she wanted, Tommy. Freedom. The next morning, I was having coffee in my new studio apartment across town when my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, Facebook tags. The whole town was buzzing about Deb's public meltdown. Mrs. Blevins, our elderly neighbor who knew everyone's business before they knew it themselves, had filmed the entire thing and posted it to the neighborhood Facebook group. The video showed Deb in her front yard, still in her yoga clothes, screaming at Chad while he loaded boxes into his Tesla. You said it was just paperwork, she was shrieking. You said Brent was too stupid to cause problems? Chad was trying to calm her down, but his usual smooth confidence was cracking like ice in spring. Deb, we'll figure this out. My lawyer will... Your lawyer? Your lawyer's the one who told me I'm personally liable for $4.7 million in environmental cleanup costs. Your lawyer is the one who explained that my husband transferred a contaminated property to me. That's when the video got really interesting. Chad stopped loading boxes and stared at her. What contaminated property? The house, Chad. This house. The house you told me to put in my name for tax purposes. The house that apparently sits on top of a chemical dump. I paused the video and took a sip of my coffee. Perfect. See, what Deb and Chad didn't know was that I'd been more than just a process engineer at the auto plant. 3 years ago, I'd blown the whistle on illegal dumping by Meridian Development Corporation, the same company Chad worked for as an environmental consultant. The same company that had been laundering money for some very unfriendly people from Detroit. The DOJ investigation had been quiet, thorough, and devastating. Meridian went bankrupt. Several executives went to prison. And I'd quietly purchased our house at a sheriff's auction, knowing full well what was buried in the soil beneath it. I'd been sitting on that information for 3 years, waiting for the right moment to use it. My phone rang. Tommy. "Brent, you sick bastard," he said, but he was laughing. "I just saw the video. Please tell me you planned this." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said innocently. "The hell you don't. You transferred a contaminated property to your cheating wife, didn't you? You magnificent son of a—" The line went dead. I looked at my phone and saw that the call had been dropped. That was weird. Tommy had good service. Then I heard the footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Heavy footsteps, multiple sets, moving with purpose. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the back window. My studio was on the second floor, but there was a fire escape. As I climbed through the window, I heard my front door explode inward. "Where is he?" a voice demanded. Deep, gravelly, with a slight accent I couldn't place. "He's not here," another voice replied. "Place is empty." I was halfway down the fire escape when the first man appeared at my window. Big guy, expensive suit, face like a clenched fist. He saw me and shouted to his partner, "There, fire escape!" I dropped the last 10 feet to the alley and started running. Behind me, I could hear them climbing through the window, cursing in what sounded like Spanish, mixed with creative English. The alley opened onto Riverside Street, the old warehouse district where I'd worked summer jobs in high school. I knew every building, every shortcut, every hiding place. My pursuers didn't. I ducked into the abandoned Hartley Textile Building, a 5-story brick monument to the town's industrial past. The ground floor was a maze of old machinery and broken windows, perfect for losing unwanted company. I could hear them behind me, their expensive shoes slipping on the oil-stained concrete. They were city boys, probably from Detroit, definitely not used to chasing people through industrial ruins. "Split up," one of them called. "He can't have gone far." I climbed to the second floor using a service ladder I remembered from my teenage years. The metal rungs were rusty but solid. From the catwalk above, I could see both men searching the ground floor with flashlights. My phone vibrated. Text message from an unknown number. "We just want to talk, Mr. Holloway, about your wife's new business arrangements." I typed back, "Wrong number. I don't have a wife." The response came immediately. "Funny. Your wife's boyfriend owes our employers a significant amount of money, money that was supposed to be cleaned through property investments." Ah, now I understood. Chad hadn't just been falsifying environmental reports for Meridian. He'd been helping them launder cartel money through real estate deals. When Meridian collapsed, the money disappeared. And now, the cartel wanted it back. From my perch on the catwalk, I watched the two men give up their search and head back toward the entrance. One of them was talking on his phone. "He's gone." "No, we'll find him." "Yes, we know about the wife." "Understood." After they left, I climbed down and made my way to the back exit. Time to pay Chad a visit. Chad's downtown condo was everything my house wasn't. Modern, clean, expensive, and soulless. Glass and steel reaching toward the sky like a monument to mediocrity. I found him in the parking garage, loading more boxes into his Tesla. "Going somewhere, Chad?" I asked, stepping out from behind a concrete pillar. He spun around, nearly dropping the box in his hands. His usual perfect hair was disheveled, his designer shirt wrinkled. The man who'd been so confident about stealing my wife and destroying my life looked like he'd aged 5 years in 5 hours. "Brent? Jesus, you scared me." "Look, about Deb and the house situation? Relax," I said, walking closer. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to help." His eyes narrowed. "Help with what?" "Your cartel problem." The box slipped from his hands and crashed to the concrete floor. The contents spilled out, stacks of cash, hard drives, and what looked like property deeds. Chad scrambled to gather everything up, but I'd already seen enough. "How do you—" he started. "Know about your money laundering operation?" "Chad, I'm the one who brought down Meridian in the first place. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize the same pattern?" He straightened up, and for a moment, his old arrogance returned. "You can't prove anything, and even if you could, you're in this now too. Your wife signed those transfer documents. She's legally responsible for everything." I pulled out my phone and showed him another video. This one was from his own condo, recorded by the security camera he didn't know I'd hacked into 3 weeks ago. The video showed Chad and Deb in his living room, going over financial documents. Chad was explaining how they would use my house as collateral for a loan to replace the missing cartel money. The beauty of it, Chad was saying on the recording, is that Brent is too trusting to read the fine print. He'll sign anything if we frame it right. And once we have the loan, we can disappear. Let him deal with the consequences. Chad's face went gray. You've been watching us. For weeks, I confirmed. I know about the falsified soil reports. I know about the missing cartel money. I know about your plan to frame me for your crimes. And in about 10 minutes, so will the FBI. That's when Chad snapped. He lunged at me, swinging wildly with his fists. I'd been expecting it. 3 years of unemployment had given me plenty of time to get back in shape, while Chad had spent the same 3 years sitting behind a desk. I sidestepped his clumsy punch and drove my knee into his stomach. He doubled over, gasping. I grabbed his shoulders and slammed him back against his precious Tesla. Here's how this is going to work, I said, my voice calm and
Your ex, the one you said you blocked, 300 messages this month.
He contacted me from
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
conversational. You're going to call your cartel friends and explain that you've recovered their money. Then you're going to turn yourself into the FBI and testify against everyone else involved. In exchange, you might get witness protection instead of a shallow grave. And if I don't, he wheezed. I smiled and held up my phone again. Then I release everything to the FBI, the cartel, and the evening news simultaneously. Let them fight over who gets to you first. Chad slumped against his car, defeated. What about Deb? What about her? She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. I was walking away when he called out, You know she never loved you, right? She told me you were just a safety net until something better came along. I turned back one last time. Chad, the difference between you and me is that I never needed her to love me. I just needed her to underestimate me. 3 weeks later, I stood on the courthouse steps, watching my former life get auctioned off piece by piece. The house, the furniture, Deb's yoga studio, everything was being sold to cover the environmental cleanup costs and legal fees. Deb sat in the front row of the auction crowd, wearing a cheap dress from Target instead of her usual designer clothes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no expensive highlights. The cartel had frozen all her accounts while they investigated Chad's money laundering scheme. Her lawyer was a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mason sat beside her, still confused about everything that had happened. He kept looking around for Chad, who had disappeared into witness protection after cooperating with the FBI. The boy who had wanted to change his name was now stuck with the consequences of that choice. Tommy stood next to me, shaking his head in amazement. I still can't believe you pulled this off. You destroyed her completely without throwing a single punch. I didn't destroy her, I corrected. She destroyed herself. I just made sure she couldn't take me down with her. The auctioneer's voice carried across the courthouse lawn. Next item, the defendant's 2019 BMW, seized for asset recovery. Do I hear an opening bid? Mrs. Blevins, who had become the unofficial town chronicler of Deb's downfall, was live streaming the auction on Facebook. Her commentary was brutal and hilarious. There goes the car she used to drive to her yoga classes, where she taught other women about finding inner peace while she was planning to destroy her husband's life. The irony is thicker than her makeup used to be. I had to admit, watching Deb's face as her possessions were sold off one by one was more satisfying than I'd expected. Every item represented a piece of the life she'd tried to steal from me. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Gold. Federal prosecutors want to meet with you next week. They're building a case against the entire Meridian network. Your testimony could put away a dozen people. I typed back, happy to help. Justice should be served. Another text, this one from an unknown number. Mr. Holloway, this is Agent Martinez with the FBI. We'd like to discuss a consulting position with our financial crimes unit. Your expertise in environmental fraud could be valuable. I stared at the message for a long moment. A new career, a fresh start, a chance to do something meaningful with my life. You okay? Tommy asked, noticing my expression. Better than okay, I said. I think I just got a job offer. The auctioneer's voice rang out again. Final item of the day, defendant's wedding ring, 14-karat gold with diamond setting. Do I hear $20? I watched Deb's face crumple as someone in the crowd bid on the ring I'd given her 12 years ago. The ring that had symbolized promises she'd never intended to keep. 25, called out Mrs. Blevins, apparently determined to own a piece of the drama. 30, countered someone else. The bidding continued until the ring sold for $65 to a stranger who probably just wanted the gold. Deb was crying openly now, the reality of her situation finally sinking in completely. That's when Mason stood up and walked over to me. "Dad," he said quietly, Can I come live with you? I don't want to be Mason Moffat anymore. I want to be Mason Holloway again." I knelt down to his eye level. "Are you sure? It won't be easy. I'm starting over, just like you." "I'm sure," he said. "Mom told me you were a loser, but losers don't win, and you won everything." I hugged my son for the first time in months. Over his shoulder, I could see Deb watching us, her face a mask of regret and desperation. She'd lost her husband, her lover, her money, her home, her business, and now her son. "Mr. Holloway?" a voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see a woman in a business suit, FBI credentials in her hand. "Agent Martinez, we spoke via text. Could we have a word?" I stood up, keeping one hand on Mason's shoulder. "Of course. We've been following your case with great interest," she continued. "Your ability to uncover and document complex financial crimes is exactly what we need. The Meridian investigation has revealed connections to organized crime throughout the Midwest. We could use someone with your skills and knowledge." Behind her, I could see Deb being led away by federal marshals. The environmental charges were just the beginning. The money laundering investigation would keep her tied up in court for years. "What kind of work are we talking about?" I asked. "Financial crime analysis, undercover consulting, expert testimony. The pay is good, the work is meaningful, and you'd be helping put away people who destroy lives for profit." I looked down at Mason, who was listening intently. "Would it involve travel?" "Some, but we're flexible about family situations. Single fathers get priority for local assignments." Mason tugged on my sleeve. "Dad, does this mean you'd be like a secret agent?" Agent Martinez smiled. "Something like that?" I thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. The betrayal, the humiliation, the months of careful planning, the satisfaction of watching my enemies destroy themselves with their own greed and arrogance. "When do I start?" I said. 6 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom, watching the final act of my revenge play out. Deb was at the defendant's table, wearing an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs, listening as the judge read her sentence. "Mrs. Holloway, you have been found guilty on 17 counts of conspiracy, money laundering, and environmental fraud. The court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation." The gavel came down with a sound like thunder. In the gallery behind me, I could hear Mrs. Blevins whispering to her companion, "12 years! That's what she gets for thinking she was smarter than everyone else." Mason squeezed my hand. At 11 years old, he was still processing everything that had happened, but he'd adapted better than I'd expected. Kids are resilient. They bounce back from trauma faster than adults, especially when they feel safe and loved. My new job with the FBI had given us stability and purpose. I'd helped uncover 3 more money laundering operations in the past 6 months, and Agent Martinez said I had a real talent for following paper trails that others missed. "All rise," the bailiff called out. "Court is adjourned." As the courtroom emptied, Deb's public defender approached me. "Mr. Holloway, my client would like to speak with you before she's transferred to federal prison." I looked at Mason, who shook his head. "I don't want to talk to her, Dad. Can I wait outside?" "Of course." I walked him to the hallway and asked Mrs. Blevins to keep an eye on him. She was delighted to have another opportunity to be part of the drama. Back in the courtroom, Deb sat alone at the defendant's table, her hands folded in her lap. She looked older, smaller, broken in ways that had nothing to do with her physical appearance. "Hello, Brent," she said without looking up. "Deborah." I sat down across from her, maintaining a careful distance. I suppose you're satisfied now, she continued. You got your revenge. You destroyed my life completely. I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse or understanding. I didn't find it. I didn't destroy your life, Deb. You did that yourself when you decided to steal from me, lie to me, and use our son as a weapon against me. I never meant for things to go this far, she said. I just wanted something better. Is that so wrong? Wanting something better isn't wrong, I replied. Destroying other people to get it is. She finally looked up at me, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Fear. Real, genuine fear. What's going to happen to me in prison? She asked. You'll serve your time, hopefully learn something about consequences, and maybe come out a better person in 12 years. And Mason? Will you let me see him? I considered the question carefully. If he wants to see you, I won't stop him. But I won't force him either. That'll be his choice to make when he's ready. He hates me, she whispered. He's disappointed in you, I corrected. There's a difference. Hate can be overcome. Disappointment requires earning back trust. The bailiff approached our table. Time's up. Prisoner needs to be transferred. Deb stood up, the chains around her ankles clanking softly. Brent, I know you'll never forgive me, but I want you to know I'm sorry. Not just for getting caught. For all of it. I stood up as well. I forgave you months ago, Deb. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying that anger around was poisoning me. Then why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you give me a chance to make it right? I looked at her one last time. This woman who had shared my bed for 12 years, who had given birth to my son, who had planned to destroy my life for money and status. Because forgiveness doesn't mean there are no consequences, I said. You made choices. Now you get to live with them. The bailiff led her away, and I walked out of the courthouse into the afternoon sunshine. Mason was waiting for me on the steps, talking animatedly with Mrs. Blevins about his new school and his plans to join the science club. Ready to go home, Dad? He asked when he saw me. Ready, I said. We walked to our car, a modest Honda that was reliable and paid for. No more luxury vehicles or expensive yoga studios. No more pretending to be something we weren't. As we drove through town, Mason asked, Dad, do you think Mom will really change in prison? I don't know, I answered honestly. People can change if they want to badly enough, but they have to want it for themselves, not because they got caught. Do you miss her? I thought about that question for several blocks. I miss the person I thought she was. But that person never really existed. I miss her too, Mason said quietly, but I like our life now better. Is that weird? Not weird at all, I assured him. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a family is losing the people who were making it unhealthy. We pulled into the driveway of our new house, a small but comfortable place in a good neighborhood, with excellent schools. It was everything our old house had pretended to be, a real home. That evening, as Mason did his homework at the kitchen table and I prepared dinner, my phone rang. Agent Martinez. Brent, we just got word that the Detroit cartel operation has been completely dismantled. 43 arrests, including the top leadership. Your work on the Meridian case was the key that broke everything open. That's great news, I said, stirring the pasta sauce. There's more. The Justice Department wants to offer you a permanent position as a senior financial crimes analyst. Full benefits, pension, the works. You'd be based here locally, minimal travel. I looked at Mason, who was struggling with his math homework, but determined to figure it out on his own. Can I think about it? Of course. But Brent, you've got a real gift for this work. You see patterns that others miss. You could help put away a lot of bad people. After I hung up, Mason looked up from his homework. Was that about a new job? Maybe, I said. How would you feel about your dad being a full-time crime fighter? He grinned. That would be awesome. Can I tell my friends my dad works for the FBI? If it happens, yes, but no classified details. Deal, he said, returning to his math problems. Later that night, after Mason was asleep, I sat on our front porch with a cup of coffee and thought about everything that had brought me to this moment. A year ago, I'd been an unemployed factory worker with a cheating wife and a son who was ashamed of me. Now I was a federal consultant with meaningful work, a son who respected me, and a future full of possibilities. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Saw the news about Deb's sentencing. 12 years? You really did it, man. You got justice. I typed back, Justice got justice. I just helped it along. Another text came in, this one from an unknown number. Mr. Holloway, this is Chad Moffat. I'm in witness protection, but I wanted you to know that I testified against everyone. The whole network is finished. I know I can never make up for what I did to you and your family, but I hope this helps. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Chad's attempt at redemption was too little, too late. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. A car drove slowly past our house, and I recognized Mrs. Blevins behind the wheel. She waved enthusiastically, probably eager to share the latest gossip about Deb's sentencing with the rest of the neighborhood. Let her talk. The story was over now. The bad guys were in prison, the good guys had won, and justice had been served with a side of poetic irony. I finished my coffee and went inside to check on Mason one more time before bed. He was sleeping peacefully, his math homework completed and neatly stacked on his desk. His FBI junior agent badge, a gift from Agent Martinez, pinned proudly to his bulletin board. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new cases, new opportunities to make a difference. But tonight I was content to simply be a father whose son was proud of him, a man who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, and a citizen who had helped make his community a little bit safer. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't about destruction. Real revenge was about building something better from the ashes of what was destroyed. It was about proving that good people could win without becoming bad people in the process. It was about showing the world that sometimes the quiet guy in the corner, the one everyone underestimates, is the most dangerous opponent of all. Not because he'll hurt you, but because he'll let you hurt yourself. And then he'll be there to document every moment of your downfall for posterity.